All right, I want to say greetings, peace to everyone. Again, this is your brother Wudjau, and just wanted to follow up from a show yesterday. I had made a promise to do a open panel discussion, so and that's something that I like to encourage. I like interactive discussions, panel discussions, so that we can iron out different issues, maybe different concerns, different questions, and we can also share information. So I'm going to post the link so we can jump straight into it. And again, this episode or this show, this session relies on your participation. So don't be afraid. We can have up to 100 people, I believe, 100 people here. So I appreciate anyone who wants to participate. Now, the thing about these open panel discussions, the only thing that I require is that we, of course, exercise good character, and we also exercise common communication etiquette where we don't cut each other off. We allow a person to speak, and also we also have to remain and be as concise as possible. You know, try to avoid being long-winded and taking control of the mic for too long. All right, so I'm going to post the link here, and I really appreciate the participation yesterday, and some of the feedback that I've gotten was very good so far on pretty much all of these different shows so far. Now I do take acknowledgement, and I can hear myself doing it right now. Someone had pulled my coattail and said that I always say and that is very, very true. That's been an issue that I've tried to work on. I've been doing good lately, and see, I'm still saying it, so it's gonna take some time. So bear with me. You know, I have to get rid of the in when I speak and everything, and that's very annoying to even myself. So I will work on that. I appreciate that. All right. So as you can hear, we already have someone in on the conversation. So I'm going to prep the conversation and then, open the floor up. I just want to wait for any more participants to get in here. So I will do just that. So I'm going to prep the conversation and kind of do a quick review of the things that I've been talking about on the previous videos. So one of the earlier videos, which is not too long ago, I did a video presentation on what is reparations, just something brief to share with everyone on what reparations is. And the reason why I did that is because I keep hearing people, when they refer to reparations, they refer to a dollar sign. They always refer to money. And reparations is more than just money. So in that particular video, I broke down the 5 major elements of reparations. You can go to the video and watch it, with the money being only one element, which is compensation. But you have restitution, you have some other elements that I went over inside of the video. But compensation is only one part of it. All right, so we have to make sure we are reminded of that and clear on that. All right, because we have people that are saying cut the check, and the focus is on money. But we also need policies, programs, and protections, which is also incorporated in reparative justice, which is what reparations is. And that's another thing. Reparations is what you will commonly hear us say and talk about. But we're speaking about reparative justice, to repair, to make something whole. All right, so visit and I'll watch that video. Another video, I spoke about HR 40. Just giving an outline of HR 40 for those who may not have been familiar with it and what it's really speaking about. When we hear HR 40, a lot of people are saying that it's a study, which is true, but they're using it in a context as if the study is to figure out if slavery happened in the first place, or if people were indeed damaged from slavery, being that it did occur in the past. And when you read the study, or when you read HR 40, it is a commission to assemble a commission of congressional or members of the commission in order to do a comprehensive examination of the impact of slavery, but not just slavery as in chattel slavery, but also the things that came after slavery. All right. And this commission is very important in order to examine that, in order to determine and set proposals, put forth proposals for remedy. And this is what we refer to as restorative or reparative justice. All right. So the commission is absolutely necessary. And I think people are a little confused between those two. So I went over HR 40 to kind of bring that to light and to share that with everyone so that we can properly characterize what HR 40 is about. All right. And then I did a part 2, a follow-up, because when I did that video, the Black Authority, or Jason Black, who people are familiar with, did a video and was reading and read through HR 40. And in that video, the primary theme of the video was to trash HR 40 in the context of killing it, that it's not needed, and that HR 40 is a waste of time, simply cut the check. And so I did a part 2 as a follow-up to reiterate that that is definitely not the position that we should take and the stance that we should take. All right. So I had to make sure that I emphasize that to everyone, and we could discuss that tonight as well. All right. It's very important to understand that that is a very detrimental position to take. All right. And we can get into that. Let's see. And then the previous video to this one, I just wanted to share some information about the latest updates in terms of the new co-sponsors on the bill, HR 40 bill, as well as Senator Cory Booker, which is a presidential candidate, his proposal or his submission of a companion bill to HR 40 in the Senate. All right. And so I spoke on that last night. And so that's pretty much what I've been speaking about in the latest videos. And so I want to have this open panel discussion so that we can discuss any of the concerns, questions, and the sharing of information. So with that, I do see I have a couple of people in the panel, and I'll keep posting the link from time to time. And again, don't be afraid or intimidated. It's a panel discussion. It's open to everyone. It's open to the public. Again, I only ask that we practice good character and common communication etiquette where we don't cut each other off and so on. All right. So with that, I'll open the mic up to those who are here now. In any order, you can introduce yourself, or at least let us know where you're hailing from, what state, and then you can have the floor. All right, so this will only work if we get participation. So now I'm known I can run my mouth for a long time. So let me turn to the chat, and I will post up the link again. Let's see if we can get the link in here. And by the way, when you come in, you don't have to have your video on. Just need your audio. So video is optional. Just want to make sure everyone understands that. So I'm going to keep posting the link. And feel free to chime in. So in the meantime, I'm just going to keep on talking. So the one thing that I want to keep emphasizing is this position of HR 40. Now, a lot of people may have never heard of HR 40 until recently. So it's interesting that instead of doing research on HR 40 and the process of how bills become laws, it's interesting that people listen to commentary, and then come to the conclusion or have a stance of trashing HR 40, getting rid of it, or killing the bill and then cutting the check. So what is the problem with that stance? Because I spoke about that in previous videos, and this is something that I'm really trying to push, how detrimental that is. So why is it detrimental? All right, so one of the things, oh, and by the way, if you haven't already, and I spoke about this before, definitely subscribe to Dr. Tracy McCarthy's YouTube channel. All right. She just recently, as of yesterday, did a short video, and all of her videos are pretty short and concise, and they're very informative. She is a psychologist and an attorney, if I'm not mistaken, and subscribe to her channel, and watch her videos. They're short and concise, but they're very informative and compact with the information in terms of the legal aspect of our discussions and the advocacy. So yesterday she did a video comparing or showing the process of a commission and a study, and why it's necessary and when it has occurred in history, in recent history. And so she showed the comparison of the Japanese reparative justice that they received, or restorative justice that they received because of internment. And I'm speaking about Japanese Americans during World War II who were interned, put into camps, and removed from their homes and their businesses and so on and so forth, and they were damaged. So she explains in a very concise way that process, how long it took from 1942, which is when the incidents occurred, up until 1988, and even after, until some sort of reparations was given, to show a timeline of the process and how the process works. Okay, so that would be a good model to look into and to research if you want to understand why a commission is needed and necessary, and to keep in mind the timeline of this process. All right, because the impression that people are giving is that kill the commission, because when you say kill HR 40, you're saying kill the commission, do away with the commission, and just cut us a check. And then the what's implied is that, okay, hurry up. It's been too long. It's been 400 years. You don't need to study slavery. Of course, slavery happened. Of course, we're damaged. We don't need to study anything. We don't need to examine anything. We don't need a commission. Just pay us. That is the sentiment that people are walking away from in other discussions that we've seen. All right. And that is a very problematic position to take, because really that is fantasy. All right. Anyone who has that position is really delusional and living in fantasy, because the United States government, reparations will come from the United States government. And the way that the United States government operates, it's not going to cut a blank check where you or a group of people will fill in an amount. That's fantasy. All right. So a commission is needed to study the impact of slavery and all of its vestiges, everything from slavery all the way up to the present day. I'm speaking about black codes, Jim Crow, redlining, sharecropping, all of the different things that you've heard people speak on. That has to be thoroughly or comprehensively studied to understand its impact. And then a reparative justice program needs to be implemented and proposed so that a solutional remedy can be given. And this may be a multi-generational remedy. All right. So it's not something that people should expect to be overnight, as if 2019, everyone's going to get a check in the mail like people are expecting their tax returns. All right. So I just want to keep emphasizing that. and please share that and understand that. So we can have this discussion. Anybody who disagrees with that, by all means, you can come on the panel and discuss it. So, again, I'm going to try this again and open the mic for those who are in the panel so far. And again, if you don't mind, just, say your name and where you're hailing from, and you can just have at it.
Can I be heard?
Yes, I can hear you.
What's going on? My name is Sid. I live in Atlanta by way of Philly. And I can say that I've been a part of this ATOS movement pretty much following Yvette and Antonio kind of independently of each other. I stumbled on Antonio from watching Zoe Williams and Yvette through when she was with Boyce. And I noticed that, they started doing like little split screen interviews. And I started finding myself kind of intrigued by their content. And I wouldn't call myself the most politically astute person. So the more I watched, the more they just made sense. And I found myself kind of wondering, was the wool, kind of pulled over my eyes insofar as how well we were doing as a collective. So to fast forward, when they kind of just organically came up with the concept of ATOS, I was all aboard. And once I kind of adopted the terminology myself, pardon me if my background is kind of loud. I'm on the truck. So yeah. So once ATOS was the kind of the move, I kind of propagated it, and just like how Yvette and Antonio kind of predicted, a lot of the non-ATOS black immigrants kind of really were on attack. And I find Garfield in particular to be very problematic, and I feel like he's being very disingenuous with the fact that he's just disappointed in the efficiency of Yvette and Tone's approach to the reparations movement or advocacy. I really feel like he feels left out, and he wants to kind of promote HR. I feel like he has an idea of what HR 40 is, and he feels like it's solely just this propped up bill by N'Cobra. And it's like, because N'Cobra speaks about kind of an all-inclusive reparative justice, he feels like, oh, if I get N'Cobra pushed in front of Yvette and Tone, then maybe my people in the diaspora will also be weaseled in somehow by implanting that African terminology into the ATOS hashtag or acronym. So I find him to be very problematic in this point in time, and I find it interesting that he did that. He conducted this interview, this supposed interview with two brothers that were ATOS. In my opinion, those guys held their own. I felt like they were a bit bombarded. Point, the guy who eloquently articulated himself very effective, and he would like switch up the pitch. Pick up another thing. And allow the brothers to fully get their point out. And I feel like he has an agenda that's self-interested, but he promotes it as though he's pro ATOS outside of himself. And with that being said, he knows about the inaugural conference in October, but he never brings that up. That has to be brought up all the time, and he acts as if he doesn't know. So if they're not moving at a pace that's to his liking, then why not just kind of fall back, be patient, and see where they go from here? And like you said the other day, if they're not in the room with movers and shakers, then you connect the dots for them. If you indeed know who these supposed movers and shakers are that they're allegedly not in cahoots with. So it's like if you are a supposed ally, then goddamn be an ally. But you seem to try to be a rock in a sock. And I appreciate you for how you kind of openly pronounce how you disagree with his stance, his approach, and like he's pretty much like a proverbial pain in the ass. Insofar as the progress that we're making, because I'm noticing a lot of movement and a lot of headway in this movement, and people with like him and that are like-minded needs to just kind of step aside and allow us to make this charge and move forward with this claim.
Okay, so
So
let's. All right, so listen, I appreciate everything you said, and so let's kind of unpack what you said. And so first of all, because of the nature of our the quote unquote conscious community and everything, I do want to make a disclaimer, because you mentioned the brother Garfield, and in this kind of climate, people will instigate and take things out of context, and how things can get. So I just want to make a disclaimer that the brother Garfield is not here. Hopefully he'll come and show and come into the panel, but because he's not here, I don't want to make it sound like we are speaking about him in any ill fashion or whatsoever, and that he can't defend himself and so on and so forth. So in order to unpack everything you were saying, I want to kind of make it. You mentioned Garfield specifically, but it applies to people who have the same stance. So I want to kind of unpack it in a way where we're talking about everyone who is taking this position, and it's not just the brother Garfield. All right, so
right. There's another brother that lives in UK, and he had a panel. I watched it. I think about 2 weeks ago, and he had this sister African Esquire, another brother that's ADOS, and they were, I guess, they felt the need to kind of uphold their was it pro-black Pan-African disposition above ADOS, and I feel like because the brother was actually quite articulate, but I just felt like he kind of had this sort of condescending tone about the whole movement because Africa is removed, so to
all right,
speak.
here's the thing. So in unpacking what you said, so this is the thing. ADOS. So this, I'm gonna repeat a lot of things that I've been saying all along. Even on the brother Garfield show. ADOS as an acronym has two functions. It functions as an acronym referring to people. Like, for example, I am ADOS. I am a citizen of the United States of America. Therefore, that's the A. I'm an American. And I am a lineal descendant, which is what the D stands for. I am a descendant, not a collateral descendant, but a lineal descendant. My lineage. I descend from a victim of the institution of slavery and all of its vestiges. So this is a inherited, lineal, multi-generational impact and damage that has been done, and it's an accrued damage and debt. So I'm a descendant of a person who is a victim. So of the institution of slavery, and that takes care of the O, of, and S for slavery. Now, I know people will say ADOS as American descendants of slaves, and slaves and slavery and enslave, and I've seen people argue over that. People prefer enslave as opposed to slave, not realizing that the S in ADOS is neither one of those. It's slavery in terms of the institution. But, people are arguing over the choice of words, and that gets into semantics and everything. Which some people feel that's very, very important. And me dealing with languages, I understand the importance of words and their connotation, denotation, et cetera, et cetera. So now, the reason why I bring this up, because this is a justice claim and a conversation between ADOS and the United States government. That should be understood first and foremost. So anybody who is not ADOS needs to have that understanding before they even open their mouth. And so with that understanding, if a person is not ADOS, they have to come into the conversation a certain way. Either they're going to come as an ally, or they're going to come as an enemy or as a detrimental. If they're neutral, then those kind of people will stand down and stay out of the way. But when a person enters the conversation, there's only two options. Either you're going to be an ally and help, or you're going to be a detriment and an enemy. And so this is something that has to be realized for anybody. And so when the noise is, when people pour gasoline on the noise that people are, observing, that's going on in the conversations, then that is a detrimental act. That is self-sabotaging. That is a distraction. When people emphasize petty, gossipy type of back and forth, people get personal. People don't know Yvette Carnell, don't know Antonio Moore, but yet they'll talk about them, or they have talked about them in terms of their personal life, all the way into the things that are being said, not realizing how the conversation is unfolding and coming into the conversation. So what I've said to people who are non-ATOS is that Trevor Noah, who is the host of The Daily Show, and matter of fact, you can look at his show on YouTube. He's the host of The Daily Show, and one of his shows, the topic of his show, well, actually, it wasn't even a part of his show. It was an outtake of his show during I believe it was a commercial break or a break of their recording of the show, but it was still filmed. And so on YouTube, you can see this. I believe it's about 6 minutes long, maybe 9 minutes long, where he's addressing a question from the audience about white privilege and reparations. Now, he is an African immigrant from South Africa. And the way that he articulated the conversation and the argument was perfect. And that is the way that any non-ATOS person should come and enter into the conversation, at least have that understanding. So this is what I charge everyone, Garfield included, and anyone like Garfield, and any non-ATOS, to watch that video, understand what's being said, and then model themselves after that. That way we'll have more allies helping, because we need allies. We have more allies helping than people who are instigating and distracting and may mean well, because I doubt that a lot of people who are even part of the gossip, who are even part of adding fuel on the fire, intentionally want to, sabotage or be adversarial. So, but we have, we can't half step. All right. So we have to point these things out. We can't allow any elephants in the room. When things come up, we better address it immediately, to the point where we can't be reactionary to ourselves. We have to be actually proactive and preventive. We have to use preventive measures. So these are the things and the stances that we need to take, regardless of who it is. And these are for ATOS. And we have some ATOS people as well. And like I said, I address both, because we have people who are ATOS who don't understand the process, who are championing or pushing this stance of do away with the commission, but they say it in the form of kill the bill, kill HR 40, really not having understanding of the importance of the process and how it unfolds. All right, so this is something that we have to remember, and that's how I kind of want to address the things that you were saying. Now, if the brother Garfield comes on the panel and we can get into specifics with him, then yeah, I definitely don't mind that at all.
Right, and I agree with everything you said. I'm just curious as to what his stance will be, after Yvette has kind of admitted to being open, Anton, being open to kind of revise and amend HR 40. And I guess that would include also Cory Booker's Senate equivalent. So I just want to know, like, if it's apparent that they're moving at their own calculated pace, when you hold the microphone in another ATOS's face, then what are you going to say? Because your whole thing was HR 40, push HR 40. It's like, well, first of all, not so fast. We're not stupid over here. We're calculated. So if we have all intention to push HR 40 with an amendment or some revisions, then let us go about that the way that we're doing so over here. without all the extra input. And you're right, as far as ATOS, just kind of being uninformed and, just jumping straight to cut the bill, kill the bill, cut the check, you can tell it's not thought out. But I don't know if those hashtags, so to speak, are as much of a detriment versus people on actual platforms, and channels, actually speaking out against either the people or the advocacy altogether.
Yeah, and see, what I want to keep emphasizing is that reparative justice or restorative justice is a one-time shot. And I keep saying
Sure.
this. I keep saying this that this topic, this discussion is of great importance and it's very, very serious. And I said last show, that we have to be mature. We have to be scientific. Mature means that we have to, conduct ourselves a certain way, not get into, the biases and the petty, chatty patty, gossip, emotional things that we've been seeing. So we need to be mature. We need to be scientific, which means that we have to have proper research methodology. We have to research. We have to gain information, acquire information, assimilate the information, know what we're talking about, and we have to be surgical. We have to be surgical in executing our strategy. And the reason why is because this is a one-time shot. A one-time shot. Because once reparations is given or some kind of program is formed, you can't go backwards. You can't go back and say, it wasn't enough, or we didn't get everything that we should have. So we have a one-time shot that we have to take it very serious. And it's almost like, if anybody who's been in the construction business, especially if you're a carpenter, among carpenters, they have this saying, measure twice, cut once. Same thing with barbers. If you cut hair, once you cut somebody's hair, that's it. You can't put it back on. Of course, they have weaves and things or whatever the case is. But in general, once you cut somebody's hair, you can't put it on. Once you cut a 2x4, and you make a mistake, you can't glue it back together. So the saying is to measure twice and cut once. Means that you have to get it right the first time. Double check, triple check, quadruple check yourself. Cross your T's and dot your I's. So this is what I mean by surgical. We have to be very, very specific. We have to know what we want. In order to know what we want or what we need, we have to assess the damage. We have to actually properly characterize the problem. We know we have a problem. We know that we're at the bottom of the totem pole. But how did we get here? And how much damage has occurred in relationship to other things? So all of this has to be looked into. And this is what I mean by mature, scientific, and surgical. So we have to take these conversations very serious. And so we can't allow the emotional arguing and fussing and fighting to get in the way of that. All right. And this is what has happened. It's going to happen because of the nature of social media and the nature of the movement. It is a social media movement comparable to the civil rights movement, with the exception of, now we have different technology. Back in the 60s, there was no internet, no cell phones, no easy and quick access to other people and so on. You had to either write letters or pick up the telephone, make a long distance call, which was expensive back then, just calling from state to state. Now we can pick up and call across the world for free, and whatnot. And we have social media where large amounts of people can come together at any given virtual space. And that was not accessible back then. So the nature of this movement being in this day and time, it is almost like the wild, wild west at some points, where you can't control who jumps on board or what people say and so on and so forth. So we're going to have people who are not mature, people who are not scientific, and people who are not strategic or surgical. But they want to jump in and get involved. And so that's going to happen. And by us knowing that it's going to happen, we have to account for that and just stay focused. We want to prevent it. We don't want it to happen, but we have to understand that it's going to happen, and it has happened. So when people use their platforms to throw gas on that, that's where it becomes very, very problematic. We're supposed to be putting the fires out, not igniting them and expanding the fires. We're not supposed to blow and pour gas on the fires. And so this is what I try to push and speak out on, because that's the problem. But the fussing is going to happen. That's to be expected. And the nature of this advocacy, because the one thing about Yvette and Antonio is that they are putting the fire to everyone. It doesn't matter who you are, because they're not interested, as they say. And like, again, I don't try to pretend to speak for them or be a spokesperson of them. I'm only going by the things that you can hear directly in their videos and so on and so forth. And they said many, many times, they're not looking for BFFs. They're not looking to make best friends with people. It's all about advancing the agenda. All right. It's about making us whole as a people. It's not about them personally. It's about all of us collectively. And so in order to do that, you can't, it's like this. If you have a business and your business is very, very meticulous, your business is doing very well, and it's a business where you have a lot of precision and so on and so forth, and then you have a relative who needs a job. And so you want to help out your own family, so you're going to hire your relative. Now, as a business owner, knowing how your business should run, you can't allow that relative to do anything that's going to be detrimental to your business. So you're not going to focus on the fact that you are blood related to that person. That has nothing to do with you running your business. Now, the blood relation may inspire you to hire them because you want to help them out and you want to help family out. But as far as the operations and running of the business, no, that has nothing to do with anything. That can't be used as an excuse to allow damage to be done to the business. So this is the attitude and the position that I see Antonio and Yvette take. All right. And so this is the attitude that we all should take, because we have, for example, Reverend Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, Sheila Lee, and all these other people. We're all in this together, but at the same time, we have to be about the business, and we have to do this right or not right at all. We get one shot, so we better make sure everything is on point. And so that's what I see them doing, holding the fire up to everyone, making sure that this thing runs. Because another thing, HR 40 or the conversation about reparations has been on a national level in the federal government, at least for the past 30 years. And it has gotten nowhere. Nowhere. All right. So now the time is ripe. We have access to technology. People are being more informed. People are being, ever since Obama ran for president in 2008, a lot of more of African Americans have been more participants in politics, even though, as far as voting is concerned, even though we haven't taken the time out or done enough study of politics and government and policies and procedures and so on and so forth. But now there is a difference. Now there's a change. There's a paradigm shift occurring. And so now is the time. And so, I don't want to keep rambling on. We have some other people on here. So if you want to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, tell us where you're hailing from, and go ahead and chime in. I know we have a couple of people, so hopefully you all not have any technical issues with unmuting or anything. If you are, you can let me know.
Hey, Wudjau. This is Rujef M. Shemes, and I'm hailing from Cleveland, Ohio. Some of the things that, I've been looking at recently is the infighting. And one of the things that we're going to be accosted with is that first we got to fight the white folk. Then we got to fight ourselves. There's been a lot of personal attacks going on. People are complaining about the name of the movement and who's running what, and that's that's all unnecessary stuff. We don't even need to be getting into that stuff. We need to stick to what we're talking about and stay honed on what we're actually talking about as far as the reparations go. And I've been looking at some of the leaders that have real stakeholders in it, like Dr. William Darity. I've been listening to some of the things he's saying, and also I don't think he's been mentioned. Dr. Claude Anderson. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he has a whole breakdown of reparations and a model. The model he wants to use is the American Indians because they've benefited greatly from what they are getting from in reparations from the U.S. government. And first of all, what they did was they claimed themselves as being a nation instead of individuals. And so that went a long way for what they're getting. One of the things that Dr. Claude Anderson was saying is that the Indians were saying, okay, well, you came in, you took our land, you took this, you did that, you put us in camps and all of that. So as a nation, you need to give us reparations because we can't take care of ourselves. Now, the blacks, on the other hand, was saying after the Emancipation Proclamation was saying, well, we just want to be equal. We just want to be, and we got nothing. So all the Indians now, they got tax free. They got casinos everywhere, and they stayed together as a unit. I agree with some of the politicians that are out there right now, like Marianne Williamson, who stood up and said, okay, this is what needs to happen as far as reparation for blacks because of all of the injustices. And then for the people that say we don't have the money to give out reparations to the blacks, well, you gave out reparations to the Indians, you gave out reparations to Germany, you gave out reparations to the Jews, and to the Japanese. After we bombed them, we turned around and gave them a couple of $1 billion for reparations. So one other thing that Dr. Claude Anderson was saying is that we have to know the difference between income and wealth. The middle class people have income, but that's not wealth. Wealth is something that's handed down. We don't have anything that's been handed down. Like if you're a black woman and you run a household, and you're running this household, your wealth as far as a white lady would be for your household would be like $1 compared to a black woman's head of house money for running the household is like 3 cents. So you have quite a disparity in the wealth, and because of what happened with the land that they took from us, and I just found out all of the from North Carolina down to Florida, that whole coast was actually given to blacks right after the Emancipation Proclamation. These little islands were given to us, and those were places that we were holding down. And I guess after it wasn't the president after Lincoln came back and just said, hey, no, we're going to take all that back. So all of these resorts that are now along that coast there are white owned, but they were supposed to be ours. So I'll just sit back and listen and see what your response is going to be.
Yeah, just quickly. Yeah, I'm familiar with Dr. Claude Anderson and his work and actually his publications and everything. And that's been addressed, the pros and cons of the ideologies behind that, and how to use some of those elements in this particular justice claim. So I would suggest that people, if you haven't already, I definitely suggest that you subscribe to Yvette Carnell's YouTube channel. She comes on Mondays and Wednesdays for 2 hours at the least, and her format is that she speaks for an hour and then she takes calls for the second hour. And then Antonio Moore has a YouTube channel under Tone Talks, the username Tone Talks, and he goes on, I believe, Tuesdays and Fridays, if I'm not mistaken. And he stays on for an hour. And his format is that he will create questions, topic questions, or things to address, like bullet forms, but in the form of questions. And then throughout the show, he will go forward and answer those questions. All right. Now, for the past 2 years, ever since about 2016, separately, as the brother said before, they have had a community of people. Yvette had a community of people under the banner of Breaking Brown, and Antonio has had a community of people under Tone Talks. And so these two communities kind of combined and work together to form ATOS. So that's basically how the community, or the actual people and the movement, kind of started to take off. But in all this time, they've been dealing with the data. They've been crunching the numbers and dealing with the data. And that's something that attracted me to their work, is that they lead by math. They lead by the data. Because math, science and math, it can care less about how you feel about something. It could care less about your biases and everything. It is what it is. 1 + 1 is going to be 2, whether you like it or not. And so I was attracted to the fact that they lead the conversation with the data, and they've been doing that for quite a while. So in saying that, they've had to address and point out the things from other economists or other people who deal with data, such as Dr. Claude Anderson. So I just wanted to encourage everyone to one, look into Claude Anderson if you haven't already, get his books and everything, but also look at the videos where that information was addressed. I believe it was done by Yvette not too long ago, where I think, I forget the title of the video, but if you go on her channel, you'll be able to see the video. All right. So, but yeah, and what you said at first, when you first started, you were saying, the infighting. And so it goes back to what I'm saying, that this is very, very serious. This is a monumental historical endeavor that we're engaged with, comparable to the civil rights movement. It's just, it doesn't look the same because we're dealing with social media. We have we have different technology and so on. And I have this thing frozen on you. I'm sorry about that. But we have the technology, so it doesn't feel the exact same. And plus, a lot of us, we weren't old enough to be involved with the civil rights movement. So our civil rights movement experience is handed down from our parents, or something that we read and we see in terms of documentaries and everything. So this is our chance to actually do something that's very, very similar, but of course, in keeping with the time and the technology. So we don't have time for the distractions. Now the detractors and the pessimists, you can best believe that they existed during the civil rights movement. I'm sure that the civil rights leaders, the leadership of the civil rights movement, I'm sure they heard the pessimism. Oh man, you're gonna march to Washington and ask the white man for a handout and for this and for that and for civil rights and the right to vote. So you can imagine the exact same conversations took place. All right. But we're on social media, so everybody has a voice. If you have an internet access and a smartphone or a smartphone, your voice can be heard. So the pessimism is very loud now, but it existed back then. You best believe it's the same thing. The same things happen. And remember, people try to pit Malcolm versus Martin, or Nation of Islam versus the Southern Christian League, or the different organizations of that time. So the same thing here: Pan-Africanism versus ATOS, black immigrants versus ATOS. So we're seeing the same things play out. All right. So it's to be expected. But one thing for sure, we can't add fuel to that fire. We need to put those fires out. And I'm going to tell you, what will put the fires out is knowledge, understanding, and becoming competent in politics, in civics 101, civics, basic civics, politics, government, and law. If people slow down and take the time out before they open their mouths or stretch their fingers on the keyboards, if they were to take the time out to study and learn before opening their mouth, it would cut down, not everything, but it would cut down on the fighting a whole lot. And so this is what I encourage and tell people to do every time. That's why every time I try to speak, I try to just offer clarity, because I see it. I see that people are arguing for no reason. Like you said, people are arguing over the acronym. Like if you wanna keep saying African American, by all means, say African American. It's just that the claim holders, we have to be very specific. African American is not descriptive enough for the claim holder, for the claim. You know, it's a nice, neat package when we say that we are citizens of the United States of America and we're lineal descendants of victims of the institution of slavery. And even with that, you got to be specific. We got to talk about colonial and United States of America, chattel slavery, and then everything that comes after that. Because, you know, the United States, it was colonies before they were united. And so we incorporate all that. So in general, it's from 1619 up until approximately 1952, I believe, is the time frame for the qualification. And then what qualifies a person to be ATOS has to be very specific, and it has to work. It can't be any problems with that. So Dr. Darity has made a proposal that at least one of your ancestors will have to be show that they were formerly identified as a Negro, colored, Afro-American, African-American, Black American, and so on and so forth. And you you as a claim holder today would have to have also identified yourself as such for at least 10 years. And that's just a proposal. So that may not even be the final inclusion or exclusionary criteria. And so those things have to be ironed out. All right. So anyway, so yeah, that's what I would suggest. Now, I do see the comments now. You know, I gave the link to come in. Let me post it again here. Because again, you know, for those who are just tuning in, number one, I definitely appreciate it. Two, we're having a panel discussion, and this discussion requires your participation. So I'm posting the link that you can join the panel. Don't be afraid. Don't be intimidated. The only thing I ask is that we exercise good character and we don't cut each other off and try to be as concise as possible when you do speak. But I'm going to post the link. Give me 1 second. Keep posting the link here. And then I just want to address some one person's question. And if you have a question for me and you're not on the panel and you're just typing it in, preference the question with, you know, putting an @ sign in my name so your question will be highlighted, because it's hard for me to see, because I know in these chats people are having conversations among themselves, and so it's hard for me to follow with the conversation of what people are saying. All right, so all right, so make sure you join the chat, join the panel. And again, you don't need your video camera. Video camera is optional, but you at least need a microphone to be able to talk to us. All right. So now the question I wanted to address that I did see was about HR 40. So I'm going to quickly do that. It was a question about HR 40, and I am going to see if I could get this. I'm sorry. Give me 1 second here. I want to share my screen. I'm going to show you all HR 40 real quick.
Peace, Wudjau. This Kadeem from Atlanta. I also got a question about HR 40 as well.
Okay, so let me just share this real quick, and then we can go right to your question. All right, so what you're seeing on the screen, what everybody's seeing on the screen is number one, Congress.gov. And if you watch any of my videos, I've been giving you all some of the resources that you should definitely bookmark in your browser. Congress.gov is one where you can find all of the current filings, bills that have been passed, been submitted, that's in committee, the status of them, the sponsorship, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so what you're seeing on the screen is Congress.gov, and where I went, if you notice at the top, I did a search for African-Americans Space Act, and I put it in quotes, so you all can do the exact same thing. As a matter of fact, let me get my cursor over there. So you all can do the same thing, all right? And when you search, what you're going to find, the search results, you're going to have 16 search results, all right? And these 16 search results are the results of all of the submissions for the Commission to Study and Develop Reparation Proposals for African Americans Act. Now, we've been calling it HR 40. HR 40 is like the docket name and number. All right, so so when we say HR 40, just understand that that's what that is. But the actual bill itself is called Commission to Study and Develop Reparations Proposals for African Americans Act. And see, if people even knew that, right, then the fussing about the acronym ATOS would be eliminated, because if we're supporting HR 40 or we're supporting the commission, it has the name African Americans. For those who would like to continue to use that terminology, African Americans, it's the title of HR 40. So if we're pushing HR 40 and it's the title of HR 40, then we shouldn't have a problem. So we can't be picky, and we have to have these understandings. But anyway, the reason why I'm showing this is because the person asked the question, where was HR 40 in 2008? And I think they're asking that in reference to President Obama, Obama being the president at that time, and he being the first black president, etc. If HR 40 was in existence, then why didn't it get any traction? But what I wanted to show was HR 40 was first introduced in 1989, and it wasn't called HR 40. It was first introduced in the 101st Congress in 1989, and it was called HR 3745. It was first introduced by Representative John Conyers, and he introduced it in November of 1989. Okay, so it wasn't always called HR 40. The next year, he reintroduced it, and it was called HR 1684. All right. The year after that is the first year that it was called HR 40, the 103rd Congress, and he reintroduced it. So he reintroduced it every Congress ever since 1989. So this has been 30 years, and you can see them all. And what I suggest is for you to read them all. And by reading them all, you'll find out what has changed over time. And I did that just to see and make note of the changes. And there's not very many changes until
wasn't called HR 40. It was first introduced in the 101st Congress in 1989.
All right, so we have
and it was called HR 3745.
Okay, I'm gonna have to mute your mic. Sailor for Life. I know you just came in, and I think you're listening on the YouTube side instead of in here. So you're gonna have to mute your YouTube video and listen here. But I muted your mic because I'm hearing the feedback. All right, just to let you know. So real quickly, in here anyway, what I'm saying is that you can read them all. Okay, you can read them all and go through its chronology and see how and when they were submitted and by who. They were submitted by John Conyers all the way up until, if I fast forward up till the 114th Congress was the last Congress that he submitted it, which was in 2015. All right. And then it was submitted in the 115th Congress by John Conyers. Sorry, so 2017. And then we have Sheila Jackson Lee. All right, who introduced it, the current one that we see. All right, so now if you notice, just on the perusal, you can see from the 114th Congress, we see that the title changed in the next submission. So we have the Commission to Study Reparation Proposals for African Americans Act. And then we can see the title change to Commission to Study and Develop Reparation Proposals for African Americans Act. And the language within the bill changed. All right, so the language within the bill changed where they added six more members to the commission itself. So it went from a 7-member commission to a 13-member commission. That was one of the biggest changes. All right, and I already went over this, so I just wanted to kind of share that with everyone. But that's a good question. Why didn't it get traction? If we have a black president in office, why didn't this bill receive traction? Why didn't it come out of committee successfully, the House of Representatives and as well as the Senate? What happened? And so it's with that in mind that we can't allow any half-stepping. We can't allow ourselves to be bamboozled and to assume that we are properly represented in government. We have been historically known to vote Democrat for the past few decades, at least the past 5 decades or so, 3 to 5 decades. And we assume that by doing so, our vote is being given in exchange for policies, programs, and protections, but we're not getting them. And so at this point, we're taking a stance and saying no more. And this is reflected on the ATOS101.com website in the Black Agenda, the first bullet point there. And I've read that over many times and slowed the conversation down to explain that first bullet, where it says the bribery must end, where Democrats have been using affirmative policies based on affirmative action policies to address and deal with this broader group of people called minorities and not something specific to ATOS. And so the impression is that we're being pacified for the damage that has been accrued because of slavery and all of its vestiges when it really hasn't. So this is something that we're taking a stance for now and holding the fire to everybody. All right. So, without rambling on too much, I'll just open the floor back up. So again, join the panel. If you have anything, any words, any concerns, anything to share, just at least be concise. And, I'm going to be the exception so I'm being a little long-winded here because I'm going to try to address what everyone says. But if you don't mind, just please be concise as possible. But the floor is open.
Yeah, okay. I had this one question about HR 40. And I forgot about NCOBRA, but isn't it like NCOBRA and ATOS pushing the same bill, HR 40?
That's true, yes. Yep.
Okay, so I don't understand what's like the rhetoric with people trying to choose sides on who to push. Because, NCOBRA has been about for a long time, and it's just not that we just hearing about this. Why ATOS is, kind of like the new approach.
Well, the way that the arguments have kind of grown is it's really the nature of organizations in and of itself, and this is not towards NCOBRA or any specific organizations. This is all organizations. If you're old enough, just observe all organizations. When an organization is started or created, it's created most of them are created out of a need. It has a mission, it has a goal. And when you first start the organization, it is young, it is vibrant. The members of the organization, the participants in the organizations, they're hungry, they're zealous. Everyone wants to make things happen. And so as the organizations mature things slow down, you know, and you become a little bit more lax. You become a little bit more lazy. And sometimes you're so close to something that you start to miss things. And so this is just the nature of organizations in and of themselves, especially ones that don't renew itself with fresh, new, youthful blood, figuratively. So a lot of these organizations suffer from that. And it's not something to say about, any particular ones. It's just all organizations. That's just the nature of organizations in and of itself. And knowing that organizations or people who administer these organizations, they try to keep fresh. They try to stay fresh. They try to either, stay youthful. They try to recruit. They try to, they roll their administration and membership. They have, temporary positions, people who will serve as CEO or manager of this or that for just 1 year or 2 years, just to keep it fresh, keep fresh minds in there. So you have that going on. So organizations do mature and they slow down and they get older. And so when other organizations come up, they're already vibrant, vigorous, and everything. And so what happens is that the older organizations will react to that. And so what we have to understand in our communities, we have to understand the concept of this two-way street when it comes to elders and the youth. And that same principle spills over into elder organizations and youthful organizations. And by the way, ATOS is not an organization. Hold up, I'm hearing somebody's. Let me have to mute your mic. The ATOS is not an organization, so that has to be made clear that ATOS is not an organization. But as a movement, it's new, it's more current, it's recent, it's taking advantage and leveraging the technology and social media, et cetera, et cetera. So without that two-way street embedded in our communities of respecting the elders and the elders respecting the youth, and that two-way street, that two-way communication and relationship, that breakdown in that relationship is showing forth in the breakdown of how Cobra as an organization is reacting to the movement of ATOS and vice versa. And so instead of pouring gas on that, we need to put the fire out, and people have to have that understanding. And sometimes it doesn't go so well. Sometimes it can, But yes, Cobra is in full support of HR 40. ATOS advocacy is in full support of HR 40, with a caveat now, with an exception, that if you listen to ATOS, HR 40 is not good enough as it is written.
That's the point I wanted to make too. Like I heard that they said it was trash, but just to figure of speech. But I was thinking, like, would it be a problem just to revise HR 40 and reissue it?
Well, that is the order of the day, and I closed off the last video by reiterating that to everyone. The business today, the what we should be advocating is a revision or an amendment to HR 40 and the companion bill that's introduced in the Senate, because as it is, HR 40 is not good enough. It needs more teeth. And as a matter of fact, Yvette and Antonio, they're doing a video. They're coming together to do a video on what needs to be changed in HR 40. That's something that she announced Monday. She announced it Monday on her show that her and Antonio, they're going to do a video to talk about what needs to be changed in HR 40, to add some bite into it, to add some more substance into it, and to be more specific. Okay, so you all look out for that. I don't know when, but that's what was announced. All right, so just want to make that clear. But HR 40 as it is not good enough. So you have to remember that people are confused with the necessity of a commission versus specifically HR 40. And because people are not understanding the difference, people are saying kill the bill as if to kill the commission, that a commission is not necessary. And that's not what Yvette or Antonio are saying at all. They understand. They say the opposite. A commission is absolutely necessary. Without a commission, like I said before, it's fantasy. Anybody who says kill the bill and in saying that, they're saying, commission's not necessary, they are living in a fantasy world.
All right.
So, and it's weird because people will say things like reparations as a whole is unrealistic, it's a pipe dream, and things like that. And people don't understand that when they say kill the bill, as if we don't need a commission to take place or to be formed, they don't realize that they're actually playing into that statement about it being a pipe dream and everything. They're actually making it reality. They're actually making the pipe dream come to pass. Not understanding. So again, like I said this before. So those who have joined on late, if you haven't already done so, definitely subscribe to Dr. Tracy McCarthy's web page. As a matter of fact, let me just show this real quick here. And I said web page, I meant her YouTube channel. And the reason why, one, is because she does an excellent job at sharing information, and it's very, very short, very concise and compact. And I'm trying to get my cursor over here. And so her latest, this is a screenshot from her latest video that she did yesterday. And in this particular video, it supports the things that I was saying as far as the importance of a commission. And so what she does in this video, and that matter of fact, the video is only 13 minutes long, but she shows the reparation or restorative justice that took place in 1988 with the Japanese Americans for the internment camps. And so she shows the timeline to highlight the fact that when people say, too much time is taken and we don't need a commission. So she shows how this looks and how this works. So in 1942, internment took place. All right, Japanese Americans were removed from their homes, removed from their businesses. And if you haven't seen the documentary on that, definitely watch it. You'll see where Japanese Americans were forced to leave their homes, forced to leave their businesses. Any retail businesses, the Japanese Americans had to sell their bit, had a short amount of time to try to sell their business, and knowing how desperate they were, people took advantage of that by buying their business or products at pennies on a dollar or a fraction of a penny to a dollar, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, this timeline is 1942, the internment took place. A commission was not even established until 1980, which is 38 years later. And then reparations, or an actual program, the execution of a reparations program, did not begin until 1988 with President Reagan. Okay, so if you want to study how commissions are done and you want to look into it, look up this particular commission. Watch the video because she has all the information in there. And I just took this screenshot to kind of show you all and share with you all to look into that. All right, so I don't have to go over that information. But anyway, we have other people on here, and like I said, it's a panel discussion. So by all means, unmute yourself and feel free to dive on in.
Peace and blessings, family. My name is Brother Maurice D. Muhammad. I'm coming from great state of Illinois. I do not consider myself to go by the name of ADOS. I go by Black First. Do I fit in the quote unquote ATOS paradigm. Yes, I am a descendant of slaves. And the thing about we have to separate what we're talking about. If we're talking about justice, then we should know by now that justice is not a diplomatic language. When you read HR 40 word by word, word for word, you see that this is a diplomatic language. This is a diplomatic document. This is not a justice document. You can't you negotiate your way to justice. It just doesn't work that way. When you understand that it's a justice claim, then actually you go about it a whole different way. Because HR 40, to go about it that way, you're depending upon others in this country to give you a vote that they would never have given to you before. What is the reason that this HR 40 all of a sudden is coming to the forefront? Because it's election time. And they've learned from last election when Black people didn't go out to the polls to support Hillary Clinton, and she lost, and it shocked the world that this idiot won. And so they understand. And so what one way that you can make Black people get all excited and go out to the polls to be bamboozled all over again? You use the word reparations. And when we go and actually understand how you get reparations, because there's multiple ways that we can actually go out and get it. One way is the current way that the ATOS is trying to do by begging your way in. These same people, as you said, that this bill first came out in 1989, and it was stuck in committee. John Conyers couldn't get these people, and a lot of these that are in office now are the same people that were in office then. Okay, he couldn't get it out of committee. There's only 52 Black members of the House of Representatives. There's only 52 of them. You need 218 to get a bill out of there. So already you don't have the numbers for that. You need 51 votes in the Senate. Okay, we only got 2 Black senators. He ain't gonna get it out of that. So the thing that we need to really be looking to understand is that the approach that we're going, because reparations is due. Let's not make no mistake over that. You are owed that. We are owed that. But it's the way we're going about it. And if we continue the stance of begging others to give us what they have no will to give us, when we speak on allies and we say that, you can be an ally to help us. If this ally has no power over the other 400 and some odd members or 300 and some odd members of the House of Representatives and over the 48 senators, then they're not real allies. Because we learned when 500,000 people showed up in Wisconsin to stop the vote there over unions. And 500,000 people went there and packed that place, and the bill still passed. Why did the bill pass? Because those 500,000 that they bust in the city had no voting power over the people who make the decisions. So we have to, as you said, use a mature mind and science and math. Okay, we know what our numbers are. So how are we now all of a sudden going to convince more white folks to go with our 52 Blacks that should automatically vote for this bill? That's a conversation. That's a different conversation, because now you have to be diplomatic, because you know as well as I know that the average Tom Joe white boy out there and white girl out there, they don't want to pay for this. They already took a poll where it says 67% of white people said that they're not going to pay for no reparations. They always say, well, why do I got to pay for it? You wasn't a slave and I wasn't here. And you know that's their thing that they say. So there's a problem in convincing white folks to do what's morally right. And we have to remember that they have no morality. They don't have morality. So trying to convince them to do something which is morally right is not going to work. We see that every day when the police kill us or mistreat us. There is no morally right coming out of that. What do? We cry, we moan, we no justice, no.
Can you cut this?
And we still get no action. Well, dear brother, you should allow me to speak because I was very quiet listening. And see, this is mature people conversation.
But you're being immature. You're doing a lot of filibuster.
No, I'm not. Unfortunately, I was sitting listening and I was taking notes, which you should be doing so that you can come back and hit me on each agenda item that I point out. So that way the people watching will be able to make clear and concise decisions, not emotionalism. This is a mature grown folk conversation. So that's the way we should be looking at it. Now, when the brother said that, we have to put out fires, we should want the fire. And what I'm saying, the fire, I'm saying that we have to put the fire into our people for what justice looks like. And then what is the appropriate manner to go out and take justice, not to beg it, because if you got to beg another man to give you justice, you're never going to get it. And that's why we're here in 2019 still discussing and begging about something to do right by us when it should have already been done. Now, also, when we talk about the guy, William, I think Darling or something like that, I watched the video where he said, the lady asked him about, well, who should get these reparations? And he said, well, the people have to prove that they are descendants of slaves. Well, we all know that I don't have a card that says that I'm a descendant of slaves. None of us do. None of us do. But the government knows that who we are. They keep these records. So why do we got to prove who we are in order to get what is owed? Then he not only said that, she asked him again, well, what does this reparations payout look like? He said, well, we could have it where if you have a business, you put money into a fund. And if you want a business, then you send us your business proposal. And if it's approved, then we'll give you the money out of that fund. I'm sorry, but it doesn't work that way. That's not good enough because the Indians got money in their individual pockets. The Jews got money in their individual pockets. Our people need money in their individual pockets. So putting it into a fund and then say apply for it doesn't work. It's not good enough. It's a ripoff. And if you read HR 40, or what Sheila Jackson Lee, what she said, she clearly stated that HR 40, the bill to for study of reparations, she says it does not address getting any money. It's just to study what are the effects. And that is true. It ain't about getting money because nowhere in there does it say we're going to give you money. It says this is going to set up a commission to study. Now, America is good at doing commissions, right? She did a commission before. She did a commission on the assassination of JFK. The assassination of JFK, this commission walked away and said that there was a magic bullet that turned and went this way and came back and killed this dude. A magic bullet. We're going to really let these people that will try to convince you of a magic bullet, or we're going to let these same commission people who come together and says that these planes flew into these buildings. Well, building 7 fell. No plane, but they said, oh, the debris knocked it down. So we're supposed to be dumb enough to think that debris from a plane from another building knocked this building down, but not that building, or that a plane hit the ground and burst into pieces, and no plain pieces nowhere to be found. And we're supposed to believe this. Now, the commission, now, if they pass this bill, right, and the current president, which is Trump, he gets to pick people on the commission. He gets to pick 3 or 4 people to be on this commission. The Democrats get, I believe, 2 people on this commission. You're outnumbered. There's more Republicans that they will put Republicans on this commission versus Democrats. So if we look at this thing properly, we got to see that this way is not going to work because we don't have the numbers. Now, the way that will work, we came up with a plan that in each city, and I'm almost finished, each city, you send your little city councils in and they vote. The black people that's in the city, that's children of slaves, they deserve reparations. It's easier to make a city council says yes to make them move than it is somebody on the federal level. Oh, yes, it is. Very easy. Trust and believe. I've been there and done that. Now, once you do
not to give out billions of dollars.
Let me finish. Once you do that, those blacks that's in that city, they get their little reparations check. It may be 10,000, it may be 15,000, it may be 5,000, who knows? Then also, once you get it at the city level, you push again at the county level, okay? Because now you understanding from one example that you need to put your own people in those places so that they can make the right votes. A lot of states, you take the state of Mississippi, a majority black state, you can do this thing and you will get reparations on the city level, you will get it on the county level, and you will also get it on the state level. Then you done gotten paid 3 different times. You're able now, from one example, because people will see, oh shit, that really works, and they will do it again. And it will continue to build. Then on the federal level, you have more power to be able to move. We got to be thinking outside of the box in order to accomplish this. And, you know, my plan, I think it works very good, but I'll be quiet and let you go ahead.
Okay, so 1 second before anybody, one second, Chris. Before anybody jumps in, let me just kind of package what was just said, because the brother said a whole lot, and we were patient, and I took some notes. Hopefully, everybody did the same to address some things. So we're gonna kind of go through what you said. You said a mouthful, and I want to kind of keep it orderly and be concise as possible, because I have some things to say to it. But this time, I'll yield. I won't go first. So I'll allow anybody else to chime in, and then we'll just kind of take turns. So, but try to be as concise as possible.
Yeah, this is Chris. I just wanted to. So I listened to the brother, and I want to thank the brother for his thoughts. It's clear he's thought about this, and it's clear that he's passionate about the issue. A couple of things I want to take issue with. The first thing is the last thing he said, which is his approach to, or his suggestion that we start at the city council level advocating for reparations from our individual cities, and then go to the counties after that, assuming we win, and then go to the state, and then go to the feds, I assume. So that is a very bad idea, I think, for a number of reasons. One, if you think it's taken too long to get us to this point right now, where we're having this reparations conversation, try doing that and see how long that takes. Okay, so that's the first problem. It's going to take a very, very long time, and there may be alternatives that take less time. So if you compare your approach, sir, to the approach that ATOS is advocating, which is a revision and then passage of HR 40, or a presidential commission set up by a president and then legislation passed. If you compare those two paths, those two ADOS preferred paths to the path that you just articulated, our path gets us to the goal quicker if you just compare those two. So that's the first flaw. Okay. And I have to ask the audience, do you want this to happen sooner or later? Okay. If you say sooner, then that's one reason why you should not support the suggested path. The second reason why you should not support the suggested path is that there are how many people where you are, how many ADOS where you live in your city. Let's say you're successful in getting your city council to agree to allocate resources to ADOS in your city. That's just your city, though. That's just the people in your city. But this is something that happened to us as a collective. So it's an anti-collective approach, and it's an anti-collective strategy. And if you've been following what Yvette and Antone and Dr. Darity have been articulating and advocating for the past 3 years, you know that we are very focused on collective uplift, not individual uplift and not small groups of individual uplift, collective uplift. So that's the second reason why this is a flawed strategy. Because I might be successful here in Sacramento, but where you are, sir, you may not be successful. And so now I'm walking around with a reparations program, check and resources, and you're not. I don't want that. I don't want to advantage myself over the rest of ADOS. So that's the second reason why this is a flawed idea. The third reason why this is a flawed idea is that what we're talking about is trillions of dollars, potentially trillions of dollars, not only in financial compensation. If you take a look at the primer on HR 40 done by NCOPA and done by the National African American Reparations Commission, who had a hand in writing HR 40, the original versions of HR 40, not the version that we're going to revise it into, but the current version. If you take a look at what NCOBRA and NARC it's called have done. We're talking the current version of HR 40, even right now, allows for several different types of remedies. Restitution, which would be the financial or monetary compensation part, is only one of those remedies. Only one of those remedies. But even that remedy by itself is going to be potentially trillions of dollars. Trillions of dollars. There's no way that my city is going to allocate trillions of dollars. Okay, there's no way that my state is going to allocate trillions of dollars because they just don't have it. Okay, so that's the third reason why that's a bad idea. It's a flawed strategy. And sir, I'm saying it with respect because again, I understand that you've thought deeply about it. So that's three quick reasons why that's a flawed strategy. The other thing I'll add is, I hear this term begging a lot. And I'm disappointed when I hear my elders say that we're begging. So I have a meeting on Friday with my congressional rep. I have my second meeting actually with my congressional rep. I'm moving her and I'm advocating to her to, one, add her name as a co-sponsor on the current version of HR 40, and then two, to work to move the bill and to amend the bill, to make changes that are good for the bill, to make the changes that we want. Am I begging? Am I begging is the first question. And then secondly, the corporation that walks out of the office right before I go in, were they begging too? And then the corporation that comes or the nonprofit that goes in right after I leave, are they also begging? So what we're doing actually, instead of we're actually not begging, we're actually taking power. We're actually making demands that can be backed up and that can be and that people can be held accountable to. So that's what we're doing, and that's the language that I use when I'm in there. That was the language that I used 3 weeks ago when I met with my rep. That's the language that I used last month when I met with our senator staff to push her to implement a Senate version of HR 40. To use the term begging, to be quite honest, it does a disservice to this effort, and it's disrespectful. It's really disrespectful to us as ADOS. We're not begging for something that's old. You're not begging the banker, or you're not begging someone who owes you money. All right, they owe you money. We're telling them pay up, and or figure out a way to pay up. Okay. Now, I've said enough there, and I really want to stop because I actually let to jump on to talk about some of the more current events, but I'll stop there because I don't want to dominate the discourse here.
May I, since our brother Chris was responding to me and he gave me some real good feedback, can I just reply to his feedback real quick? It won't take me very long.
No.
It won't take me very long.
Yeah. Go ahead, because we're gonna kind of take turns. But go ahead, so we can keep it in the flow.
Can I jump in after him? This Jermaine Woods. I just.
Okay, yeah, but I'm allowed. So the brother don't have to hold his thoughts too long because we're gonna try to be concise with this and volley back and forth. So go ahead, brother.
Okay, thank you, dear brothers. First of all, when I say beg, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but let's be real. When somebody owes you money, you come to them and say, "You got my money." It's time for me to get paid. Or when the bill collector send the bill to your home that you ain't paid, they say, "Look here, you delinquent. We need to get these funds." Or what? We're gonna shut you off, or we're gonna do this, right? So their demand is back with a power. See, when you say that you're demanding, you have no power. There's nothing. So it is a beg, and a beg really is just an earnestly and a humble ask. You're asking for something very humbly. Now, when you're saying that, my approach is not going to work because it takes too long. Unfortunately, fortunately, not unfortunately, fortunately, that's just not the case. Because and I'll give you another example, you take a black city, you got supposedly black city councils. It doesn't take anything to go and pass this bill and pass this. Now, yes, this is not about individuals, but this is a strategy where you will move. Now, those in those cities will get paid, but it also will work in another city as well. You got to get the ball moving some way, because this thing is not something that we just started. This has been going on forever. Now, when you talk about that, the price is in trillions of dollars, and it's true, it is in trillions of dollars. But if we continue the same approach that we've been going along, and this is exactly what this is. There's nothing new about it. This is the same way. You still have not came to account for where are we going to get the 60 something or whatever votes, because we need 218 from the House. How are we going to get these white people to vote for us? How are we going to get the 40
politics and organizing? Politics and organizing.
Yeah, okay. Politics and organizing we have been doing, and the bill has been sitting in committee. So again, and this is my last thing, we're asking people who we know do not have morality to ask them.
Why do you say that?
Okay, hold on.
That's irrelevant.
Wait, 1 second. Let him finish. Wait, 1 second. Let him finish.
Brother Chris, can you tell me who's your rep and who's your state senator that you've been meeting with, please?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Great question. Representative Doris Matsui. Her dad actually worked on the Japanese reparations. Okay, so Representative Doris Matsui, I have a second meeting with her, and then Senator Kamala Harris's staff is is our senator who we met with 2 weeks ago, and we have a second meeting coming up next week. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, dear brother.
All right, so now let me because I know who was that? Jermaine wanted to chime in next, but let me just say this. Let me say this because I want to kind of color it a little different. And if you can mute your mic again, brother Muhammad.
Yes, sir.
Because I'm hearing the feedback. So, now what I want to say, because I think this will kind of change the tone just a little bit, is the things, your concerns that you just expressed. I want you to understand, and I don't know how much you've been watching Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell. I'm not sure how up to speed you are on the things that they've been teaching and saying for the past 2 going on 3 years now. But they share the similar concerns that you have, because I want you to understand that your comments are about the existing HR 40 as it exists right now. And so this is what they've been saying, that it needs to be amended. It needs to be revived or revised. And so she has, both of them have said it needs to have more teeth. It needs to have more substance. It needs to have more bite to it. So they share in your same concerns. All right. And like I said, they are doing a show this week per her announcement, that they're going to go over some of the things that they feel needs to be revised within the bill. OK, so I would say that I want to say that because I don't want the people who are listening to feel as if, your concerns are not shared. Because I don't want to seem like you're adversarial to ATOS, because it's the same thing. We on the same page right now. Okay. But now, in terms of your strategy is where we kind of have a little fork in the road. Okay. And I think that how we reconcile that is, I think you should probably take some more time to understand the strategy that's being advocated in the ATOS advocacy movement in terms of politics. Now, for example, you made a statement saying that, we've been using politics and organizations or whatever. And I would have to disagree, because we as Black America, we've been apolitical and we've been non-participant in politics. And those of us who are participating or have participated in politics, we've done so ignorantly based on tradition. And so we voted democratically just for the sake of the fact that we traditionally vote Democrat. And we have this idea that Democrats represent blacks, and that Democrats represent blacks, the black voice within government. And so we have to become civically literate and politically literate and competent in order to actually do what we haven't been doing. We have not used politics. We have not used it to our advantage. We have not used our access to government effectively. And so this is what the ATOS movement is about. It's about educating and advocating. And so on the education part, education brings the power. Because, excuse me, in politics, we have to remember that politicians respond to pressure. They don't respond to applause or any of that vanity stuff. They respond to pressure. So the pressure in politics, unfortunately, comes in a few ways. And one of the unfortunate ways for us is that it comes in the form of money, okay? And it comes in the form of numbers, which is something that we can deal with. And so the first part of the advocacy is educating people who are ATOS to build up the numbers. It's about having that groundswell of numbers so that we can have the power. Now, where does the power come from? The power comes from the vote, because voting is an exchange. You give your vote in exchange for policies, procedures, programs, and protections. And so this is how you leverage. We have to learn how to leverage our vote, because you said it earlier. In the Senate or in the House of Representatives, we need 218 majority. In the Senate, we need 51 or we have to have the majority in the Senate. And as you said, we don't have the voting power. So you understand the power or the leveraging of the vote. So we have to take this thing realistically. We have to swell the numbers. And now I noticed when you first spoke, you said that you do fit as an ATOS person, but you don't self-identify with that appellation or anything like that. You identify with black first. And that's fine. But now it's not a but, because you acknowledge the fact that you are a lineal descendant of a victim of the institution of slavery. And that's really all that matters. Like, what you call yourself can be pretty arbitrary or and everything. So that's good enough. But the job first is to swell the numbers so that everybody get on the same page. And we'll never do that when we have this infighting. We got organization versus the movement. We got people with ideologies against the movement, and so on and so forth. And so we just have to be careful. So I just wanted to kind of recolor the conversation based on that, because I don't find too much of what you said disagreeing with that wasn't covered by Chris. The begging thing, we do have to be kind of clear on that. I've heard people say begging a lot, and I think Chris made a good argument about begging. We have to, technically begging is simply asking. It's an earnest ask, but the nuance is different. We should not use that word and color what we're doing as begging at all. It is a demand, and we use our votes and our leverage of our numbers in making these demands. This is a debt that's owed, and you don't beg people for something that you already owed. You demand it back. Now, whether you can enforce it is what the strategy is all about, because obviously when it comes down to it, big banks are going to take little bank. We don't have the militia or whatever. People want to run and bypass everything else and go to the fighting aspect. We can't compare. So we have to use our access to government and the political strategies, and we have to move in the best way possible. So I just want to kind of do that before I open back up. I think Jermaine, I kind of cut in with you. So if you wanted to,
can I respond just a little bit, not that much, to what you just said, dear brother?
Okay, if you could be very brief, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Okay, thank you, brother. And the reason why I say I say begging, is because that we agree that this is a justice claim. This is a justice claim. So we know we have been denied justice in this country from day one. And so when we're asking them to do something that's morally right, but a demand that is not backed up by power, then is not a real demand. It is an ask, it is a beg. We need our people to be fired up with justice, because real justice is not a diplomatic language. Justice is something you take, right? So the way that we go about reparations should be the way that we take it. How do we take what we want? We have to wake up our people who are sleeping, because they're asleep to the situations that's going on, because they've been comfortable while they're being oppressed, and that time is up. So we have to be different with our wording. And I thank you, dear brother.
Okay, so just real quick, because we agree, it's just like, I think when you use the word beg, I think you're using it as a snapshot of where we are right now or in our past. But you have to understand that this ATOS movement is changing that word beg into a demand. So we're actually doing the work of creating that power that you're talking about, so that the begging classification can look more like a demand. And so people have to be educated, like you just said. People have to be like, you're articulating it a little differently, but I think we're saying the same thing. And so what I'm saying is that we have to be careful as to start to push the paradigm, shift the paradigm, and turn it into a demand, and not to keep reiterating or labeling what we're doing currently as a beg. Now, we've begged in the past because we haven't had the power behind it, but this has changed. It's changed now. This is why the conversation, and I don't want to, it's a couple more things I want to address, but I want to kind of pass the mic first, because there's a couple of things I wrote down that I do want to address that you said. So I don't want to, it's not fair to everybody else. So let me just pass the mic. But overall, I think I don't have a problem with what you're saying. You're articulating it a little differently, but we gotta be mindful of this paradigm shift that's currently happening right here, right now. But Jermaine, if you wanted to, I think you were next.
Oh, okay. I wanted to, because he had mentioned the HR 40 and how it's been installed for, like, since it's been introduced. And I wanted just to note that there's never been a public push to push the bill from the public. Like, you had your little groups here and there, but it's never been a mass push. And that's the reason why a lot of politicians it's no fire under them to do it.
Yeah, so Well, real quick to that, because it kind of speaks to what the brother has been saying, and then what I'm trying to kind of reinterpret it, because the reason why reparations is the hot topic of the day is because of the advocacy that's going on. It's because of this awakening. It's because of this education. It's because of the what's transpiring among our people. People are being educated. People are the advocacy is working, because never before.
That's what I'm saying. That's what's different now. I mean,
right. So that's what I'm saying. So never before has reparations for the institution of slavery been on the lips of so many politicians all at the same time out in the mainstream public. And so this is what I mean by the paradigm shift. We're living it. We are in the midst of living and making history. Now, like the last video I said we have to turn up. And I think that what the brother is expressing is evolving, is happening right now. So all I'm saying in terms of how we characterize it, we have to be careful. We have to allow it to happen without prematurely labeling it as an old label of our bad habits in the past. We have a bad habit of being apolitical. We have a bad habit of being non-participant in government. We have a bad habit of being ignorant, therefore forcing ourselves to beg for this, beg for that. That has changed. And it is changing right now, right here and right now. So
and I want to touch on that the city plan too, the reparations. I wanted to ask him, do he have any examples of a group going to the city to get reparations?
Well, hold up before you answer that. I see. Okay, because even if you give an answer to that, we have to understand, because we're talking about justice, right? But we have two forms of justice. We have social justice and we have restorative justice. Restorative justice takes a legal clothing. Social justice is a different path, a different thing. And social justice is where you get this flat black and this kind of this flat black or global type of claim and things. When you're dealing with restorative justice, you have to be very, very specific, and it deals with legislation and law. And so this particular claim is targeting the legislative branch of the federal government because it is a conversation between ATOS and the United States government for the institution and all of the damage of slavery in which it sanctioned and profited from throughout history for the past 400 years. So even as a legal strategy, going to a city, it's not a lawsuit, but even going to a city demanding reparations from a particular city, the city is not just going to go and pay out and give money away.
Can I note real quick too, and then you gotta take note that a lot of blacks migrated.
Yeah, that too. But I'm saying to hold a city liable, to hold every particular cities where everybody is liable for where the specifics and things like that. Right. That would take a tremendous amount of manpower and time to actually set up commissions because setting up a congressional commission for on the federal level that's covering everything versus doing that and taking that macro and microizing it and having each city do a commission, or because they're not going to write a check for a blank check or anything. They're going to have to set up a study to study impact and how they were involved, because they have to justify spending
your claim to their city, right?
Spending that money or to that city. What damage did the city or the corporation of that city or whatever the case is did to these people for that long, and so on and so forth. So for those reasons, I don't think that is the same, and that's
so a lot of northern blacks wouldn't even really qualify because a lot of northern blacks was in the South doing a lot of our justice claim.
Yeah, this is a federal issue. Like the plan to go to the city would be something different. I mean, and that's something that it would probably take a long time.
My last point I wanted to address, because he said that if we do this on city level, that it would give us more power on the federal level. I don't understand how it would give us more power because our overall numbers still wouldn't change because you started up by saying we don't have the numbers. So even if we go city by city, we still ain't gonna have the numbers on the federal level anyway.
Well, like I said, I think that the approach that was described in terms of the city is just incompatible. It's completely different because one, you got to understand that we have 50 states that have united to form a federation, the United States of America, and each of those states are sovereign, with the exception of the limited sovereignty that they give up by being a member of the union in terms of the protection of the federal institution and the U.S. military and so on and so forth. But each state is sovereign. This is why one state and its laws do not apply, in other jurisdictions in other states and so on and so forth. Same thing with counties within states and cities and things. So you have to have a completely different approach. I don't think it's compatible at all, just based on the grounds of how the structure of government is in and of itself, and what we're claiming. So
can I just add one last thing, and I'm out of here. I want to add about the HR 40. Go back to there. Should our strategy be after it get revised, right? Should we try to put a time limit on it? Like y'all should have this study done within 2 years or by the next. So, because say like our 2020 demand is the bill. Our 2024 demand should be the actual payments. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, and a time goal is definitely a big issue to include. You definitely don't want to leave anything open ended when it comes to government. So
yeah, try to string us along with that for sure. But that's all I wanted to add. I'll go back on mute.
Yeah. So to that last point though, and I'm gonna let the brother respond. To that last point though, it's that should be a given. Like that should be a given as far as a time limit. You don't want to leave things open ended. But now keep in mind though, in terms of precedent, something that we can actually look to historically as an example, it took 8 years for the Japanese Americans to go from the state of being a commissioned study to the actual reparation program being executed. It took 8 years for that. All right, so I just want to kind of put that out there so people can understand how long that took. But brother Muhammad, I'm sure you had something to say in response. And if we
yes, sir. Thank you, dear brother. You talked about a paradigm shift. And a paradigm shift, I agree in some sense that we are going through that. Our vision of how do we go about doing what we need to do. We know as numbers, as I stated before, that our magic number we got to get in the House is 218, and our magic number that we got to get in the Senate is 51 in order for this thing to pass. Now, when we're talking about power and our demand, we know that a lot of those 166 reps that we need for them to vote come from white areas. We cannot deny that fact. And their constituents, there's a lot of these constituents that have majority white people there that, they represent. And they're not going to go for it. So what power do we have over another person that's white from a different group that we can force them to go against what their constituents want? That's one reason why I think it was Bernie Sanders that in his first thing of no for reparations, because he know that his constituents are not going to back that, so he has to look at his own security. Now, when we're thinking about the state issue now or the city issue, we got to understand that is a change, okay? The vision is different because we're attacking the problem not up top, but we're attacking it from the bottom to move up top. Now, we do it that way because when it is so much easier to get a bill passed in the city, because normally you only have maybe 4 or 5 or 6 or maybe even 10 city council people. and you need a majority of that. Now, I have worked with different cities to pass different bills on city levels. It is so much easier because you have direct force in their districts. You have direct force. You can say, no, you will do this or you will be removed from office. We will recall your ass quickly, and they will fall in line and do what you say because you can make immediate change on them. See, once you do it at one city, then the next people say, well, look, it worked over there. Let me try it over here. It doesn't matter where you are in the US. You're still going to get your money going by the city route. You're still going to get it. It's not going to be as much as it would be if it came from on top first. But you got to start somewhere. You've been working on top ever since day one, and we haven't gotten anywhere. So what I'm saying is that if we try the approach of going from the bottom, that way where you know you have more control, you know you have direct access, and it's easier to mount up change, that way you'll get it. Now, we know that you may not have been a slave, quote unquote, in the field picking cotton up north, but your ass was still a slave. It ain't like slavery was only in the South. Slavery was in every city in America. There was slavery. We were not treated better, quote unquote, in the South because you're black. No, just because they put the mask of civility on you. But it's like in St. Louis, I was at the museum, me and wife, and I read where the owners gave the slave a note and told her to take it to the sheriff. He took it to the sheriff. The slave couldn't read, but the note said, whoop my slave. So the sheriff whooped the slave's ass. It's the same thing. It's just done in a different way in a different part of the U.S. We have to understand this warfare and our strategy. We have to make our strategy more like liquid, because we got to be able to move around to target and hit. Now, when you say, well, how can the little state power equal up on the federal level to be more powerful? Because through our organizing, we're able at that point to even convince the white people that, want to be black, that dress black and want to talk black. Hey, well, since you talk this way, you want to be this way, we need you to do this. Then because you got a lot of these Tim West and all this Tim Wise and all these anti-racist white people that's supposed to be teaching but ain't doing a damn thing for us, force them now. Since they made money off of our condition, force them to come to the table and make that shit work in terms of getting us some votes now. Since you done used our plight for your advantagement, now it's time to level up and make your action real, because now it's the time. See, we have to redesign the way we think and how we see, because the real power, family, is not them. It has always been us, but we have been sleeping.
I can't be the only one tired of hearing this guy talk, man.
Hold on, one second. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so Muhammad, wait, one second, because yeah, 1 second. So listen, Brother Muhammad, I appreciate it. Now, this is what I want to say to that, because I don't want it to, because we have people watching and everything like that. What I would like to do, see, I'm listening to you, and I think that I think there's some fundamental flaws in what you're saying as it relates to reparations, not in a strategy to do something else. Like, for example, like you may mention that it's easier to pass bills and things on the city level or local level, and I think a lot of people will agree with you on that. But this particular topic, this particular claim, and what it all entails, I said it before. Maybe I wasn't clear. This is a different monster that is not applicable to what you're laying out. And I think there's a fundamental difference of understanding of how this works between what you're saying and what's being advocated by the ATOS family at large and so on and so forth. So instead of right now on this session, this video, kind of unpacking that, from you and going back and forth, maybe we could have another video where that will be the topic. What you outline. So what I would like to do is table what you are outlining, and so that we can kind of get down to some fundamentals and see if it really does fit or not, instead of using this time to do that, because there's some things you're saying that needs to be unpacked that I would like to address, but I already know it's going to take time, and it'd be unfair to everybody else and everything. And then I want to kind of keep with the theme of how I started with the fact that we got people that are trying to, because at least even in what you're saying, you acknowledge the fact that, okay, we have to have power, we have to make demands, and we have to come with a specific claim, and you're taking it on the local level and working your way from that level upwards. So at least you're saying all of that. So I want to, but there's people who are just saying cut the check. Like they don't understand the procedures at all. They're saying, okay, hey, I've read HR 40. I think it's trash. Forget it. Kill that bill and just cut the check. And so that is the the most detrimental position and stance to take, because basically you're just talking. We're just talking when we say that, cut the check. I mean, we could pump our fists all day and say cut the check. We could have T-shirts made, cut the check. We could march with signs and say just cut the check, just cut the check. That is just going to be what we call vanity advocacy with no substance. That's just vanity stuff. That's just looking good for photo ops and things like that. So we have to make that clear. But like I said, in fairness to you, I would rather you outline what you said again on a show where that will be the only topic where we can kind of get to some fundamentals, because I just think that there's a fundamental difference with what you're saying and how you're saying to execute it versus what's being advocated and what must be advocated for this particular endeavor. So I would like to table that and everything. All right. So hopefully that's okay with you. So
yes, sir, dear brother. I have no problem with that whatsoever.
All right. So I want to again, for those who are listening, I put the link into the chat. So don't be afraid to join the chat. Of course, the more people come in the chat, if we could be more concise and straight to the point, straight shooters with what we're saying, the better. So we have more time for people to chime in. But I'm gonna open the mic again, open the floor again. So anybody else has anything to say, and I'm gonna scan the chat. If you have a question for me specifically or whatever, make sure you prep my name so it'll highlight for me, because I know that people in the chat are having their own conversations about what's being said. But so with that, if anybody has anything on the panel, you want to kind of bring up.
Wudjau, Brother Jehudi wanted to chime in. He put it in the chat.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. So I have just a couple questions. Just a couple questions for you guys. So DNA is something that we should be talking about. Like a lot of leaders of the so-called ATOS movement do not speak on the blood test, which in itself is very suspicious to me. What if a 1/16 African blood test comes up for a white person? Do they get reparations? I understand that Africans can come over here and get reparations, but what if we have it as only a screening mechanism so that we can screen out children of bedouins and Sambos who have dated outside of their race, but still requiring a bloodline check back to slavery and Jim Crow? Like people who was here doing slavery, people who was here doing Jim Crow and redlining. All right, so we can have the blood test. Number one to screen out the 116 KKK member, 116 African blood, and also we can also have it so that, okay, you pass a blood test. Let's go ahead and check back to, are you a descendant of slaves, of people who was enslaved, of slavery? Currently, like, there are Native American tribes who allowed so many Anglo-Saxons into the tribes back in the days, as we all know, as $5 Indians or otherwise, that they look nothing like their ancestors today. Their original DNA is completely wiped out today. When I was in the Army, I knew another Native American from Texas. Yeah, brown skin. He looked just like a Native American person male look when you see paintings of them and stuff like that. Nothing like the movies, but straight up Native American. He was full blood, and he bragged about it all the time. I forgot what tribe he was in, but in his tribe to this day, if you go and you have a child with a black person, have a child with a white person, Mexican person, they will throw you out the tribe. All right. His children are half Mexican and Native American. They threw him out of the tribe. He can only go on there to see his family. He cannot live on the tribal lands because he had children with somebody outside. He can't live there. And his children he probably can live there without his children, but he cannot live there with his family. All right.
So
what if we did the same thing? What if we had right now? We also need to think about this. Reparations can also be a way to prevent genocide. We're not even having enough babies right now to sustain our population, as we all know. Just like white people, we're also not having enough babies to sustain our population. Reparations can be another way of saving our race on this continent. I just want to know, why aren't the leaders? I'm just asking questions now.
Right.
Why aren't the leaders talking about this in the movement? It's just so suspicious to me.
Okay, so let me.
People who are so proud of being ATOS, but don't want to maintain the bloodline.
Okay, let me address that because it was addressed already, and there's a reason why DNA is not a part of the conversation, and it's because with this restorative justice claim, we're talking about lineage. We're not talking about DNA. So then there's a difference, and people have to understand that. So what I have on my screen are some key words that people should become very, very familiar with. And I've gone over this before, so as I'm talking, I'm just showing it on the screen again. So we have to understand these principles and concepts that are behind these words in their legislative or legal context. All right. So it's not about your DNA because technically, now let me just quickly say something. We have to know the difference between having an anthropological discussion versus a legal discussion. And I say that because all of humanity, every human being that's alive today is considered taxonomically a Homo sapiens sapien. Every single human being alive today can make the claim accurately and say that they have African ancestry. Every single human being on the planet that's alive today can say that they have African ancestry. They have ancestry that comes from the continent that we call today Africa. Okay, so that is being very, very technical. That is if somebody said that, if everybody said that on the planet, they would be correct. All right. So Europeans that we're calling white under the social constructs of race, we call them white people. White people can say, and be rightfully saying so, that they have African ancestry, or they are a descendant of somebody from the continent of Africa. So
all of China can say that too.
That's what I'm saying. So every human being can say that. All right. So this is not an anthropological discussion about descent in terms of DNA, because like I said, DNA, you got haplogroups that come out of haplogroups. All these mutations, and people can trace their ways back all the way to the continent of Africa. So then you have to have a demarcation line. So how far can you go back? Like when does an African stop being an African in terms of the timeline of human evolution, or the changes that have occurred in humanity? So, but that's a whole different discussion. So this discussion is about lineage, and it's very simple. Dr. William Darity gave a proposal that is being used currently, and that may change in the near future. But as it currently stands, it's about lineage, and it's about you having at least one of your ancestors, your immediate ancestors, can trace yourself back to a person who was a victim of the institution of slavery, going from 1619 all the way up to, I believe, 1952. Okay. And as long as you can do that, and you have self-identified as one of the synonymous terms, including colored, Black American, Negro, Afro-American, African-American, et cetera, which I have couple of these names on the screen here. If you have self-identified as yourself for at least 10 years, and the ancestor that you're citing in terms of your qualification has been labeled or self-identified as such as well, then that is one of the criterias. So it's not about DNA, because you can take a DNA. A lot of European Americans are taking DNA tests, finding out for the first time that they have more recent African ancestry than they would ever think of in terms of the context of human evolution. So that's the reason why, and it's something we have to understand, and it's a good reason. We actually can't use DNA in terms of the reports that come back on DNA for this particular claim. All right, so that's been addressed. So I'm trying to kind of be brief with it, but there's more details to it. But I'm trying to give you enough to where you can have a little bit of understanding of why DNA can't be used. It's your lineage. It's about your lineage. Your ancestors, our ancestors were bones are buried here. It's our ancestors who were transported here and forced into and enslaved and built this country and survived. Like we are alive because of their survival, and they built this country for free. And then once that was abolished, then our ancestors were locked out from access to that which they built. And we got to understand that when a country is going through a development stage, that is where all the wealth is accumulated. A developing country accumulates the wealth, and we, or our ancestors, were blocked and locked out of that access to that wealth. And so this reparative justice is to make us whole, is to claim a debt that is owed. We are owed this. We built this country. The United States is what it is because of our ancestors, and our ancestors' bones are buried here. And so you have to be able to claim your lineage, not your DNA. All right, so that's different. All right, DNA is going to take you back to the continent or somewhere else, and it's about your lineage. And the demarcation line is, for a lot of things that we discussed today, is the transatlantic slave trade, Holocaust, et cetera, et cetera. It is from that event in history is where the demarcation line is for a lot of these discussions. So on the other side of that line is a totally different conversation, because I hear a lot of people say, well, why do we start our history with slavery? And none of us do. It's just for this conversation, the demarcation line is slavery. On the other side of that conversation is a whole cascade of different conversations to be made. We could talk about all of the empires that we had, all the things that we've done, that our ancestors have done on the continent of Africa in different groups and so on and so forth. We could have that conversation, but that's not a part of this particular conversation. People have to understand that. So hopefully I kind of helped you out there. And if not, you can probably follow up with another question. But I would recommend that. Now, I'm not sure how familiar you are with the videos of Dr. Darity and also with Antonio and Yvette as well. But that issue has been addressed before. Okay, so I just want you to understand it's been addressed before.
All right, that's cool. As far as I'm concerned, I understand. I've watched many of his old videos. on reparations and everything. But I understand it's about lineage, and doing the DNA test, we also have to do had to add in the fact that Darity wants to have, and 80 West movement wants to have a, um, a proof going back at least 10 years or more, saying that she was black. So a lot of these people ain't gonna say they was black. I'm just saying uh, that a DNA test is just as a screening mechanism is something that we should have. And I understand where you're coming from. What's that?
Yeah, but see, you gotta understand. Okay, just to kind of reiterate, let's say somebody from a African country comes to America tomorrow. They migrate here. They come here. They go through the necessary process of becoming a permanent resident or a citizen here in America. If they were to take a DNA test, their DNA test would be flying colors that they're African, of African descent.
And not to interrupt you, but I did address that, and I actually prepared my statements. I want to address the fact that yes, we can do the DNA test, but what if an African person comes over here? Well, we still have the other mechanism. They have to trace their roots back to that. So I'm just talking. Really, it was more geared towards the smart white person who is claiming to be black. To see the ATOS moving palm coming up. This might happen. This may not happen today. It may not happen in another 5 or 10 years.
Well, that's okay. So now with that clarification, this is something that Dr. Darity has to consider and maybe reconsider. And so, like, for example, Dr. Darity said 10 years, but then there's other people who say that no, it has to be from birth. And so that's where it is now. And like I said before, that's subject to change. But because the concern is there, because let's say because again, the Japanese Americans receiving reparations, it took 8 years between the commission that studied it, and for the execution of the reparations program. That took 8 years. So let's say with this one, it takes longer than 8 years and longer than 10 years. Then, like you said, somebody who's smart and sees that reparations is going to be executed.
Right.
Let's say they start self-identifying now in the 2020 census as black when they really have no lineage back to a victim of slavery, the institution of slavery, but yet they're doing it as a future strategy to benefit from it. So that concern is there. And so that's why you have some people saying nope, it has to be from birth and so on and so forth. So yeah, I hear you, and that's a concern. That's a valid concern. But even still, DNA is not part of that though. Like your concern is there, and other people share that, but DNA is not the answer. I'm just letting you know. Yeah, okay. So that's a good point. A lot of people share that. So I don't know if anybody else had something to chime in on. And I see people having conversations in the chat. So I do want to take some time to address some things. I was hoping that if you have something to say in the chat, you can come into the panel, because it's kind of hard to follow the chat and speak at the same time. So if you have a question, maybe you can kind of highlight my name where I can see it, because it's hard to differentiate people in the chat that are speaking to each other, and then you want to address something that's being said from the panel. Okay, so keep that in mind. All right. But anybody else on the panel that has something to contribute? I see Vasai, you had your hand up.
Oh yeah. When you were speaking about the formation and us being, let's just say, to paraphrase you, deprived of so much. There is a pamphlet that Benjamin Franklin put out in 1751, and he was doing the comparison of bringing us over as slaves versus hiring Europeans to come. And he actually argued that it would be cheaper to bring in Europeans than what it would cost to put insurance on us, the price of paying for us, the maintenance of maintaining a human life. But one of the key things he closed with why they would do it is and I'm gonna read this completely quoting him. And it says, "Why then will Americans purchase slaves? Because slaves may be kept as long as a man pleases or has his occasion for their labor, while hired men are continually leaving their masters, often in the midst of his business, and setting up for themselves." And, that was going to what you were saying about us being held back. And that goes into this whole conversation. If you just take that one statement, the fact that they could hold us back while others could come over here. And this is where we have to be careful when we say things like, what about the Irish? Are they going to get to have a reparative claim? A lot of those were hired in, and they got a means to repair themselves and grow in this country. We are continually fighting year after year saying, what about us? I don't want to get too long-winded. I'm more or less here for support. But it just made me think about that. And that's something for all of us to think about, that they knew from the gate that keeping us as slaves would suppress us from growing. And we need to keep that in mind. And one of the things you hear me say is always study the modes of production. And whenever you see a mode of production shift, you're going to see revolutions take place. You're going to see huge disparities take place. And that fits in with the conversation now, as I said before, because as they're going deeper into the technology age, a lot of us don't have the means to even be a part of that. So that's only going to hold our children back 2, 3, 4 generations from now. Think about where they'll be sitting. How hard will it be at that point? And then with technology blending these racial lines, how will we even have the right to claim racial discriminations? So at this point, we do need to band together, and we do need to do, as you say, slow the conversation down and have a collective conversation of what our needs and what our wants are. But we really need to focus on our needs, not so much our wants. We really need to zoom in on what do we need at the moment. What do we need to become the best we can be? I'm gonna go back to mute because I don't want to steal from anybody.
Okay, yeah, let me just because I, like I said, even though we're having this panel discussion, I do want to keep it under a certain time constraint, and so I'm just doing my best to kind of keep it manageable. So, so yeah, that's we have to really, this is the thing about ATOS. Like I said before, it's the acronym is twofold. It's one describing the claim holders of this restorative justice claim as United States citizens of the United States of America who are lineal descendants of a victim or victims of the institution of slavery at all of its vestiges, from 1619 all the way up to, I believe, 1952. All right. But it's also an acronym used for the educational and political advocacy movement. All right. So it's about educating ourselves and our people and advocating. All right. And so, and it needs to come in that order. We have to educate ourselves and then advocate. And although we're enthusiastic and we want to jump on board, some people are advocating without educating themselves first. And that can be problematic. And we're seeing that. We're seeing some of that now. And so I'm going to continue to recommend and suggest for people to slow down and really, really take a crash course in civics, take a crash course in just the legislative branch of government and how it functions, which is part of civics, by the way, and all of that good stuff, and law as well. Some basic things about law and how it works, so that you can understand why things are being said and done and why the strategy is what it is right now. Because some people may have an opinion about what's going on, but their opinion is not an informed opinion. And although everyone has them and we should respect each other's opinion, the thing that we want is well-informed opinions. We don't want, and it takes time to kind of fish out opinions that are, coming from a place of ignorance or coming out of clear blue sky. And so this is why I continue to suggest for people to slow down and educate themselves first before they start to, interject their opinions. And I'm not saying this about you, Vasai, at all. I'm just talking in general about what we're seeing, in our communities on this topic. and everything. So we have to do that. And so, you know, in the videos and you know, these sessions that I've been having, I've been trying to offer clarification to some of the disagreements that I've seen, you know, on both sides. And so this is something that we have to continue to do, is to educate each other. And so like the specificity of this claim, the people and the demands must be 1,000% on point. We only get one shot at this. You know, everybody has to sing the same song. We can't be out of tune. You can't have somebody singing in the key of C and then this other bunch of people are singing in D and off rhythm and off beat. We all have to be on beat and singing the same song. And that's where the educational part comes into play. And people have to understand it. So I cringe when I see people talk about HR 40 and mischaracterize it. It is a study. And like, first, you know, and this is why I took time out to properly characterize what HR 40 is. You know, again, and I'm going to repeat this because I'm going to keep on repeating it because I keep on seeing people talk about it. HR 40 is like a docket number. HR stands for House of Representatives, and 40 is a docket number. It just so happens to be symbolic for the 40 acres and a mule. So it fits nicely. But the bill is to enact or create a congressional commission. And a commission is a group of people a commission has members. And in this case, it will be a 13-member commission to examine and do a comprehensive study of the impact of slavery through a range of time from 1619 to, I believe it says 1952. And somebody could correct me. I'm not looking at it right this minute. The impact of chattel slavery, and then after chattel slavery, you have a cascade of things that has been done that has impacted ATOS people, and so that has to be examined, thoroughly examined, and then once it's examined to see the damage, and to calculate that damage, then a proposal to unfold or execute a remedy in the form of a reparations program. And that program may even be multi-generational. And what is being looked for in summary is policies and programs and protections for ATOS. And reparations comes in a variety of forms. Compensation is the main thing that people talk about all the time. That's the money part. Everybody wants to, here, cut the check, cut the check, cut the check. So people are talking about and demanding, a check to be cut and everything. Not realizing that, it's much more than that. It's much more than simply, cutting a check. All right. It's because you can receive money. And once the money is, we got millions of people who are ATOS. Let's just say a check is cut. People don't even know about the amount. You listen to Group A, they're saying 100 billion. Group B is saying 1 trillion. Another group saying 4 trillion. So the numbers are coming up different. Why? Because there's no comprehensive study. There's no official comprehensive analysis of the impact that this has had to even come up with all that stuff. That's the purpose of having a commission. That's the purpose of the study. Studies not to see whether or not slavery happened or whether people are damaged or owed. Is to find out what the damage is, what is owed based on that damage, and how to repair it. That's what it's about. And so this is what we have to understand. So now we don't like the language of the bill. So the push now, and this is where everybody has to stay on code. The push now is because Cory Booker has introduced a companion bill, which is a good thing. Now we have to turn up because now the strategy or the move is to revise or amend the bill, because the bill as it's written right now, it needs more bite, it needs more substance, it needs to be amended. All right, so that's where the push is right now. But to say that we don't need HR 40 is to say we don't need a commission. Anybody that says that is actually giving credence to those people who are pessimists and saying that it's a pipe dream, because you are actually living a pipe dream if you say that, if you're trying to do away with the commission, because that's not how the government works. And I don't care if people want to use the word beg or people want to use the word demand. Reparations, if it takes place, is going to come from the government. And the government does not write blank checks. And it's going to take big government. It's going to take big government. And this is the reason why the Democratic Party is the target of the conversation as opposed to the Republican Party. The Republican Party's ideology and philosophy is small government. Small government. Cutbacks, tax cuts, cutting from education, cutting from this, cutting from that. And if you pay attention, if you watch C-SPAN, you pay attention to these congressional hearings, which I suggest you do. And that can be boring, but hey, you got to have the stamina and follow along. They're talking about budget. They're talking about the cuts. That just yesterday, they had the Attorney General for the United States, Barr, in there talking about the budget of different areas in government. And they had him testify before, whatever committee that was. I forget the which committee that was. And so it's going to take big government to handle reparations. We have to understand that, okay? So, I just want to kind of reiterate those things. And for time-wise, I do want to kind of start to wind it out and wind it down. So I'm going to kind of peruse through the comments and see if there's anything that needs to be addressed that I could speak on. But in the meantime, I have posted a link, and if you do have something to say, understanding that I'm trying to close down a little bit, but I want to open the mic back up if you want to bring up something.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, you're kind of low, but I can hear you.
Yeah, have you touched on the Henry Gates documentary?
No, I didn't mention that. And if you want to kind of give a summary of it and your thoughts on it.
I don't even want to necessarily give a summary. I just want to tell you, everybody, it's a 4-part series. It's a really solid documentary, and it pretty much narrows down and talks about everything that Yvette and Tone discusses. It shows you exactly what happened going through Jim Crow. It shows the progress that we made and how they systematically destroyed it. So you can see the whole process, and it shows you how our institution of slavery is so different than everybody else, and why it needs its own separate claim. So it's a 4-part series, man. It's really great. So I would advise everybody to check it out.
Okay, yeah, that's good. So yeah, and
the Henry Gate. So the Henry Gate what?
It's called Reconstruction. It just came out.
Thank you.
All right, that's on PBS, right?
On PBS.
Okay,
Yeah.
so maybe I'll find the link and I'll put it in the description, because that is important to watch, and all the documentaries like that, and you can always do your fact finding and your research based on it. So these documentaries are not the end all be all. We should always do our due diligence, but at least it gives us a pathway of some information that we can look into and learn from. So definitely, and that's something that we all should look at. And
there's another.
Okay, go ahead.
There's another one while y'all was on that topic that PBS put out. It's a little older. It's called Reconstruction: The Second Civil War. I highly recommend people watch that one. I'm gonna go back to mute and I'll type the title in the chat. But Reconstruction: The Second Civil War by PBS.
Okay, that's good. So yeah, we need to arm ourselves with the information. We really do. We really do. Because I'm telling you all, a lot of the fussing and fighting that I'm seeing would be eliminated if more people slow things down and got out of. See, we've done this to ourselves. We have created an atmosphere where everybody has a voice, and there's no filtering of that voice. And I'm all for free speech, and I'm all for freedom of expression and things like that. But we have to understand and admit that not everybody that opens their mouth is worth listening to. Just the fact, just because you put a question mark on the end of a string of words doesn't mean your question has merit or it is valid. So this is not something negative to say about any individual. It's about us collectively. We have to understand that we have bred and cultivated an environment of microwaveism where everybody has access to everybody else. Like YouTube, like it's free. It's nothing to set up a YouTube channel. It's nothing to have your internet and just start talking and giving commentary, giving your opinion. So a lot of things are opinion based and not data or fact based, as they used to be, because everything has become readily accessible and available at the fingertips of everybody. We got smartphones. Anybody can tweet. Anybody can broadcast from wherever they are, their car, their job, whatever the case is. And so everything has kind of got spread thin. And then we get into personalities because it's so many options of things to listen to. So we gravitate towards people that we like, towards people who have, a gift of gab, who can move the crowd. And then that becomes our source. But it doesn't speak to the accuracy of or the scholarship of that individual, or the due diligence that they've done, or whatever the case is. And so over the years we've bred an inability to address issues like this. And so this is where the fussing and fighting coming in. We got people who are focused on the acronym more so than the issues. Like, ATOS, like why can't the A be African? Well, African is a continent. Like, it has no political it's not a political entity. It's not a polity. It is a geographical location on a flat earth if you talk to flat earthers, or a spherical shape if you talk to everybody else. But it is a continent that's sitting on the planet. And so we have we have polities, we have entities, we have nations, 54 of them on the continent. And so even the whole African thing, we are all by default, anybody who is ATOS, by default, you are of African descent. Why? Because the S in ATOS is to say that you are a lineal descendant of a victim of the institution of slavery, which means that you were transported here from somewhere on the continent of Africa and forced into or enslaved here. And so by default, it's within, it's implicit within the name or the acronym itself. But people want to see Africa right there. So we get into this emotional or what I like and dislike, as opposed to what has to be for reparative justice and how the law works and how things work. We have to just get on board with that. So that has to be understood. All right. So I don't know what else, like I said, there's a lot more to talk about, and I'm going to keep doing, these shows, to have an open panel discussion, because I like the discussion. But as I said, the more and more people get involved, it takes up a lot of time, because everyone should be given time to speak and respond and things like that. So I'm going to keep this up, but there's only but so much we could do in one show. So I do want to kind of wrap it up and slow it down. Wind it down. So does anybody have any last remarks that they would like to make? And then I'm gonna sum up again.
I have one thing to ask again. So, what's our punishments? What's our punishment for people, or our screening mechanisms for after reparations has been given out? Let's say that, like I said once before, what the Native American tribe example that I gave, where people are dating out their race and they're no longer even not even half blood, anymore. They kick them out right away. So what would be something that we should? I haven't seen anything about it. What should we add to the discussion about dealing with people who are no longer even a quarter African American? They're people who are dating out of the race. What should you do about it? I understand your lineage thing, but I'm talking about after reparations, and I date somebody who's white. My kid dates somebody who's white. Now the third baby on down the line looks completely white. What do we do about that?
Yeah, well, see, you open up a whole different conversation because, like I said, and I know I see why people do that because we have been conditioned to see things through the lens of these social constructs of race. And let me just say something about race, in case people didn't know. You know, there were no white people on the planet Earth before 1681. And if I were to just put a period there and not explain that, people would probably think I'm crazy. But so let me just quickly explain that we live in a caste system, which is a hierarchy system. And what happens is in a caste system, you have ranks. And these ranks have labels. It just so happens that the labels in this ranking system are words that denote color. So we have black, we have white, and we used to use red and yellow. But now those two, red and yellow, are not even used as much. They've been replaced with Native American and Asian, pretty much in the day-to-day conversation. But we still have this black and white that's very dominant. All right. And so what has happened is we feel that because the word black is used as a rank, but it's also a color, that we have identified with it in terms of phenotype and the way we look, as opposed to a rank in a hierarchy of a system. And so we have to shift that. We have to shift our paradigm. We have to change that to word it and to view it the right way. And I say that because, you know, this is one of our problems. You know, in our recent history, we've been saying say it loud, I am black and I'm proud. And what we mean by it is that we are in solidarity with one another through the struggle. Because, you know, the time that James Brown made it popular and everything like that, it was in the late 60s and 70s where people wore the struggle on their shoulder, on their sleeve. Okay, so there was the solidarity type of thing to do. But outside of that, what we're saying in terms of this hierarchy is that we're proud to be the failure class within this society, because black as a rank is the failure consumer class or rank that we're at. And white is the ownership, the producer class and the wealth. Okay. And so this is why even to this very day, when a person from Africa, the continent of Africa, if they live above the Sahara, they can come over here and self-identify by definition as white, even though they look darker than African Americans already here. They by definition, they are going to be classified as white, which should be an eye opener to let us know that, wait a minute, maybe I got this white and black thing all wrong. It's not about colors, it's about rank. And so we have to understand that. So I say all of that because what you're asking is like a different conversation. If people start to marry outside of their race, you're introducing a social construct that's slightly different than the conversation on this side of what we're talking about. You know, it deserves a discussion, but I'm just saying you're like opening up Pandora's box, because if somebody marries and has children with what we're considering a white person, and whatnot, then that's a whole nother conversation, because you're talking about, is it going to be an anthropological conversation? It's going to be a social construct conversation, or are we dealing with lineage and descent, wealth transfers, inheritance, and all this and other kind of stuff. So you open up a big box bringing
Let
that
me
up.
tell you something, brother. I work with legalizing marijuana in Virginia, and I've helped people get elected. I got 2 people elected, and I'm working on another brother down there in Danville, Virginia, to get elected. I'm saying these things because I already know the answer to them. If we don't discuss these things and put them in the bill now, like for instance, we want to have a thing where we wanted cultivation of marijuana in the bill right away, so we don't have to end up fighting for it later on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, listen to this. If we don't put these types of things in the bill now and wait till later and not discuss them now, it's gonna come back on us worse. And to discuss the things now would be the best thing to do. Get out there in the open, talk about them. What happens when somebody is no longer, ATOS anymore? Do they remain on the reparations because their parents is on the reparations? What happens? Those are things we need to talk about.
Let me say something real fast. Brother Wudjau.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Unbiased Sports. I came on late. I get off late, in the evening, so I got to catch the show over. But good question from the brother. And I want to add on, this might be a little extreme, but I believe everybody who is against the movement, the reparation movement, they should be also excluded. It should be a way where we could sign off to it right now. Whoever's for reparations can sign off to it right now. Whoever does not sign off to it, they just asked out. So that's a little bit extreme, but that's just my personal opinion on that. But the brother made a great point. And I got one more thing to say, and this is just how I feel personally, to my Black immigrant families, Jamaicans, Haitians, anybody who's not ADOS. Like, I don't have a problem with them at all. And if they were able to get some of this money, listen, I'm not mad at them. Go ahead. I'm not going to watch their pockets. If they could somehow get connected, that's all good with me. And that's all I had to say.
Okay.
Can I chime in a little bit?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. For everybody, I would suggest that you go to YouTube, listen to some of Dr. Claude Anderson's history. He gives a very good history of slavery from then all the way up until today. But he also elaborates on some of the tricks that we've fallen into, some of the pitfalls that we've fallen into by not being, as Wudjau says, not being surgical, not looking at everything and its repercussions for not, like Jehudi saying, and Ubayas, of not looking at every possibility before you change HR 40. You make sure you get everything in there that you want. And like Wudjau said, because this is a one-time shot. So you got to do your homework. And by listening to some of the things that Dr. Claude Anderson is saying, he'll tell you some of the pitfalls that we've constantly, over 400 years or so, that we've constantly fallen into these traps. And the money that we were supposed to get goes to somebody else because of a clause or something else on the end of something, and those are the kind of things that we have to be very vigilant on, making sure that we are surgical with what we're putting in this revised HR 40.
Exactly. Let me just say this, and I'm gonna close out because I don't want to take everyone away from Yvette Carnell's broadcast. I believe she just started her broadcast, so let me just kind of close out and say that that's absolutely correct, and that is why it's important. We only have one shot, and we need to make sure that this shot counts, and all this is part of the conversation, and this is why we can't afford to be distracted on the back and forth, petty, chatty, patty, emotional instigation type of things. We got to, keep ironing out the issues, keep educating ourselves, keep learning, and keep coming up and making adjustments to the strategy in real time. All right, because politics is a perpetual negotiation. We have to learn how to leverage our votes, and we have to sing and speak as one voice. And we're not going to do that if people are listening to people that are saying different things, not based on fact and the data itself. And so we have to, kind of at least come to some kind of consensus to at least do that. And while we do that, we build up and we swell up in our numbers. And so that's what needs to happen. And there's a couple more things that need to be addressed. Like I said, I will continue to do these sessions, open panel sessions, so that we can hear from more people and everything. And if you haven't subscribed already and you're listening, I appreciate you listening. And make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell. And I appreciate those who are tuned in and have added to the conversation, came on the panel, and those who are chatting. I also do rewatch the video and kind of scan through the chat, because YouTube records the chat now. So that's a good feature. And I, pay attention to what people say, and even in the comments. All right. So just quickly to summarize again, well, actually, I already summarized. So let's just I'm just gonna say peace to everyone, and I thank everyone's participation, and we'll do this again. All right. So peace.
What's up?
Gotta monetize it. Gotta monetize it, brother.
Hotep. Shemim